Hello, I'm Marg, your distance instructor, and this is probably the first time that you've seen me unless we met somewhere. I wanted to give you a little walk through distance block 5 because I've done it a bit differently. I put all the information in one place so you won't have to be looking for documents on Sakai. I'm going to ask you to read through that block 5, the whole thing, carefully, because there's a lot of information there. And this video is about assessment and evaluation. So just to be clear, because I get confused, assessment is what you do regularly. And it's saying like, how are you? How is it going? It's like a circle that you might have at the beginning of class or another check-in circle at the end of class. And we're used to that in Aboriginal communities and classes. It's just a given, but it is part of assessment. I'd like to start off with a short little story just to get you thinking. In your course book, on page 127, there's a nice little quote, and it's talking about 2 basic principles in adult education. And the 2 are having a safe learning environment and the development of a trusting, supportive relationship, personal relationships, and the environment. Okay? So I'd like to share a little story that I made up to illustrate that a bit. So the story is about 2 students, and the first one, Mark, is 5 years old, and he wasn't feeling well one day when he came into class. He was quiet and looking unhappy. He was worried about his dog. How long would his lifelong best friend live? The second example is Sam. Sam is 40 years old and he's going into his class. And he walked in one day sipping from a bottle of water. In the opening circle, he sat silently and passed the feather. He could only think of his mother lying sick at home, and she would be all by herself until he got back. Let's flip those 2. Let's say that Sam, instead of being 40 years old, is 5 years old. Let's say Sam comes in. He's 5 years old. He wasn't feeling well. He was quiet and looking unhappy, and he was worried about his dog. How long would his lifelong friend live? Let's say that Mark is the one who's 40 years old. Mark walked into the class sipping from a bottle of water, and in the opening circle, he sat silently and he passed the feather. And all he could think about was his sick mother, who was by herself, and she would be all alone until he got back. Now, I have something for you to think about. Even though these 2 are different ages, can you identify a feeling that's common to both? Like one word that is both the 40-year-old and the 5-year-old are experiencing. Just think about that. Maybe it's deep sadness. Maybe you could say stress. The point is that no matter what age the students, we have similar needs if we bring it right down to values. The situation is different. The 40-year-old has all this responsibility that he has to think about. The 5-year-old, maybe his responsibility is feeding the dog and taking care of it. They're different responsibilities, and we covered that in your other book, right? That each age has its responsibilities. Now, the reason I point this out is because I have an unusual teaching experience, because I've taught from junior kindergarten to adults. I know, I deeply know that there's much more similarity in teaching adults and kindergarten than there is difference, because our basic human needs, our emotions are very similar. So I just want to point that out, because all the time in our books, especially in this one, which is about adult education, it's always saying adult, adult, but it's not that different. In your guide, I just want to walk through a few things with you here. And again, read this carefully, please. On the page about assessment, assessment is all about gathering information. It's not about marking papers and recording grades. It's much more than that. So how do you gather information? Well, 3 ways, mainly. You observe things, you have conversations, and you look at products. Okay? How do you gather information? Well, observing, talking, looking at products, and then you have to think about it. You have to reflect. What does it mean? And finally, you respond to that. So there's a medicine wheel that I put in here. I was playing around with trying to take ideas from our course, and I was curious how it fit into a medicine wheel. Take a look at that, and you might want to add some things of your own. This could be helpful when you actually go to do your essay too. There might be some things in here that jump out at you later. The next thing is you'll see a chart, assessment and evaluation in relation to the 7 grandfathers. This is something that I did at least 10 years ago. I think I put a date on it, 2003. And my question was, what would it look like for a teacher to be doing assessment with the 7 grandfather teachings in mind? Then what would it look like as a student if I was receiving an evaluation and I was keeping the 7 grandfathers in mind, guiding me to how I should behave? So that chart is just for your edification. There's this video that I asked you to watch, and the reason that I wanted to do the video about this especially is I know that there are some people who are a little bit stressed out going to do an essay, and I really want to alleviate that stress as much as possible. I think it centers around concerns about evaluation. And it's not a bad thing. Like, I mean, when I'm doing studies and I have to hand something in, there's that stress about what do I do to get the best mark possible. So we have to kind of balance that. Of course, do our best work, be informed, know about APA and that stuff. But this is more a personal essay to begin with. I don't expect a lot of academic quotes. I'll talk about that in the next video. But just try to relax with it, because in the next video I'm going to go through all the resources that you already have that maybe you haven't realized. So that's pretty much it for assessment. I think I have one more thing here. No, that's about it. Yeah. So I'll end this video and I'll put another one on specifically about the essay. So I hope to see you face to face before too long. Thanks. This is Mark.